Hi, my name is William Honolulu Jr., and I am the General Manager of BlackUSA.news. BlackUSA.news is committed to making sure that our community gets information about candidates directly from the candidates. As part of our continuing coverage of Maryland's 2022 election season, we will be replaying shows featuring candidates for office. To find out which shows will be airing when, please don't hesitate to visit www.blackusa.news. Please also make sure that you like and subscribe to make sure that you get updates from Black USA News. Thank you.
So I can keep talking about this and COVID and some more stuff for the rest of the day. But you all today, you're going to get that. But today you didn't join me for that. Today you joined me to talk to one of the gubernatorial candidates, Mr. Doug Gansler. Familiar with Mr. Gansler, followed his career when I used to work in the Maryland General Assembly as the reading clerk and then with the Department of Legislative Services. And just as an active citizen in Maryland and concerned about how things have gone, had an opportunity to follow his career. And I'm really, really interested for you guys to hear what he has to say. Another thing, well, let's just bring him on, give him an opportunity to introduce himself, okay? Because, again, I love the sound of my own voice, and he can tell his story a lot better than I can. I'm reading it. He lived it. All right, there we go. Former Attorney General Doug Gansler. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and I like listening to your voice. I was getting mesmerized.
Thank you very much for being on the show today, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it tremendously. I saw you on with Donnie last night. Again, big shout out to Donnie Glover. You all had the town hall last night, and you all were getting the business.
No, it was right. Doc Cheatham was on there. I'd worked with him on NAACP issues since I was the head of the Criminal Justice Committee in Montgomery County back in 1989 on criminal justice issues. I really focused mostly on that and some other stuff. And then Carl Snowden, when I started the first civil rights department in Maryland's history, I needed a real civil rights person.
Oh, yeah.
And Carl was great. We looked at things a little differently than I had, even though sort of civil rights and race relations has been sort of the product of my life since I was a young child. And thought about those issues and what I could do to help, but Carl's the real deal. So,
Carl.
It was fun. It was a great conversation. Of course, Donnie cares about his community, and as you know, there's so many people that just are dyed-in-the-wool Baltimore folk that don't understand why Baltimore's being left behind, and so many other cities in Maryland and Maryland, but also in the country, are realizing its promise. But Baltimore, for some reason, can't seem to get out of its way in terms of leadership and folks. So we talked about that, and you heard it. And it was
I heard about that. Now I got my own opinions on that, but this isn't going to. Donnie got the Baltimore-centric show. This is more. I'm looking more Maryland-wide because my mom lives down in Prince George's County, and a whole bunch of my cousins. I have family in Montgomery County, so I'm trying to and family in Charles County. So I'm trying to keep it broad.
Yeah.
But don't get it twisted. When you come back, we're going to talk about some Baltimore-specific things. Because and not just Baltimore specific, but also some of the other Black communities around Maryland who are not faring as well as the communities they're right around.
Well, that's right.
One of the great examples is that there are a couple of legislative districts in Prince George's County. They call it inside the Beltway, and those communities are suffering tremendously, especially when you think about the economic wealth that surrounds them. And so, part of it. Let's get started your traditional interview style. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And just let me warn you, you know how Donnie rolls and the people he brings to the table. So it's only going to stay traditional for a very little time. Okay, so
that's okay by me. Just real quick, I will introduce myself. But on the Black communities in Maryland, this is my fourth time running statewide. I ran and won for Attorney General twice and lost for governor. But you find there's some pockets, interesting pockets, like Somerset County, for example.
Oh, yeah. That's
Southern Eastern Shore is 47% African American. Obviously, UMES is there. But, it's a statewide issue. And Hagerstown's got its issues. But in terms of myself, so I grew up in Maryland. There's a lot of folks running for governor, but I grew up here in Maryland. Went to Chevy Chase Elementary, still in Chevy Chase, so I haven't moved far.
Okay.
And was an assistant United States attorney under Eric Holder for 6 years in the District of Columbia, mostly doing homicides the last 3.5 years, but prosecuted all types of crimes and learned a lot from Mr. Holder, General Holder, and then after that, I ran for state's attorney and won. I ran against the establishment, the machine that had been there for 30 years. We won that job, so I was the state's attorney in Montgomery County for 8 years and put in some of the things that I learned from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Like I was the first fully implemented prosecutor's office in the country to implement community prosecution, which helps. It's a more effective way of prosecuting. Instead of by prosecuting by crime, you prosecute by neighborhood and jurisdiction, and you help bridge the gap of trust between the police and law enforcement that they serve. Then put the first domestic violence dockets in, drug courts, the whole thing, and then ran for attorney general and won that job and served there for 8 years as well, and one of which I was the head of president of all the attorneys generals in the country. Then I ran.
By the way,
governor.
Congratulations on that, because that is not a an easy seat to secure. So, and some of the problem I think is a lot of people don't understand kind of the background of it. You know, because it's like, oh, I mean, so they voted you. It's like, no, that's a pretty big deal to be acknowledged among your peers. So, you know,
thank you. It was, and we did some great things there. And then ran for governor and lost in 2014 to Anthony Brown, who was the sitting lieutenant governor at the time. And as a result, we got Larry Hogan for the next 8 years. And I've been in the private sector doing a number of things, represent some states suing fossil fuel companies over climate change. I'm on the board, you talked about Inside the Beltway in Prince George's. I'm on the board of College Track, which is in Suitland. It's the Kevin Durant, actually, where he gave the money to help the school there. And then been on the board of Year Up in Baltimore and for many years. And
shout out to Year Up. Whenever we hear good partners, we got to shout them out, because Year Up does some really great work. So shout them out. So yeah, good business.
Year Up's amazing. And it was great for me, particularly because I go, I'm not one of these rich cats. I go to Joseph A. Banks for my suits. So buy one, get 12 free. And I had all the extra ones, and I was able to donate those to Year Up.
I'm trying to graduate to where you are. I stopped by Ross's real quick, see if they got anything.
Okay, you do you. And then also I started, as I actually mentioned last night, I started at a lacrosse league, an inter-city lacrosse league up in Baltimore called Charm City. About 12 years ago, we have 500-600 kids, and we help mentoring and get them into schools and give opportunities to them. So I've been staying active, and then like all of us, during COVID, we had a time of introspection and reflection, and I got encouraged pretty heavily to run for governor. The main the main candidate right now is the comptroller, and he's a 74-year-old tax collector, and a lot of the Democrats were not happy with him because he sort of went over to the Republican side for a long time, and I got pushed in and encouraged to run as somebody who could actually win both the primary and the general as we look at the most Republican year in our lifetime next year. So talk to a lot of people, talk to a lot of folks. My currency is, in fact, helping people. That's what I like to do. And so so we're running. There's a lot of people in the race, a lot of good people.
8 of them right now.
Right now. And it's interesting. So, we feel like a state senator said to me the other day, you're not the prohibitive favorite, but I'd much rather be you than anyone else in the race right now. And I think that's where we are objectively.
Okay.
But it's a lot of cross currents out there. So we'll see how it plays out.
Okay. So that explains why your constituency and your supporters want you to be governor. They see the potential, and they also see some of the things that they believe will be bad for Maryland. But let's start with you. Why do you want to be governor?
Well, I want to be governor for the reason I just said, which is I like to help people. I mean, I'm doing. I work at a law firm. I'm doing great. It's a great job. But I just I was up in Baltimore and watching people. I mentioned this last night. I stood outside Terra Cafe, about to go in there and see Terrence Dixon and Casey Jenkins, a couple restaurant owners up in Baltimore, and it was on my phone on a call. It was really an illuminating moment. And watch folks kind of wandering around as if they with no hope, no sense of optimism, and thinking, I've done a lot of things in my public service career, but one of the things that I really, really would love to do is try and fix Baltimore. It's not that I can fix it, but I want to dig in and do everything I can to help Baltimore fix itself. It doesn't need handouts. This is a place with enormous, human talent. and potential, and people just need an opportunity to have access to public health and criminal justice and jobs and education
and we're gonna switch to talking about, and I think it's a really good opportunity to move to kind of the conversation that I want to have around education and economic development in particular, because a lot of those things, to your point, have been disproportionate about Baltimore. But however, there's some things that actually, because I'm a Marylander, so it was one of your constituents. One of the things that I want to, and a Baltimore proud, I'm not a Baltimore native, but this is home for me. Let's not use the phrase "fix Baltimore." Let's not talk about that, because especially with your mental health platform, understanding that the concept of broken, especially in a place like Baltimore, with a lot of the Black communities, it is not that the communities are broken; it's that the communities have been disinvested. So it's not that the communities are not broken themselves and need to be fixed; they need to be invested in so that they can grow. Yes. It's not that Baltimore should look like this and there's something missing and we need to fix it, or like a car is broken down. This car is doing what the system wants it to do. The problem is that the passengers in the car right now, we're kind of tired of it. This car we need a new design of the vehicle. We don't need it. This bus has been, who was it? Victor Clark. You know Victor. Victor always talked about how, if you're on a bus and it's broken down, you don't want them to just keep fixing the bus. Let's get a new bus. Let's talk about innovating, and that's one of the things I appreciate about your platform. So let's go ahead and jump in. Mental health off the break, because a lot of things you're talking about with people not having hope and things like that, while they're not unique to Baltimore, they are more prevalent in Black communities because of some of the systemic issues, a lot of the trauma, community-wide as well as identity, leading to mental health challenges. Tell me a little bit about your mental health plan, how you're going to help.
Yeah, and it also goes to the idea of sort of not fixing from above, but fixing from the ground up. Where I'm
just going to suggest in Baltimore, saying fixing probably won't go all that well. Just going to suggest.
Yeah, no, and people have the answers, and they have the talent to have the answers. They just need opportunity and lack of sort of a foot on their neck. And I think in mental health, mental health is an incredibly interesting issue. It's a very complex, hard issue. But as when I've run in the past, nobody used to talk about mental health. Like, I wouldn't go to a forum and someone would say, well, what are you going to do about mental health? What about the mental health issue? And yet we all saw it and knew it was there all along. And now people are talking about it. So just having it as part of the dialogue is a start. A few areas of specifics, though, that are part of the mental health platform, and it's on DougGansler.com. But it would be for schools. I mean, this is where there's a sort of an overlap, where every school, the 1,428 whatever schools in Maryland, everyone would have mental health officers, folks there that are available per 250 children that can come and talk to them about what's bothering them at home, what are they bringing to school that's not in their backpack but inside their heart and their minds, and having real mental health experts work through that with those children, and that'll help prevent some school shootings and some of the other things and crime and all these other issues.
I love this part, and it's because it intersects the education piece and the mental health. Now, but here's the question: how are you? And I want to take this one by one, because again, I've had an opportunity. Oh, by the way, dude, Eric Brown, your guy. Eric is wonderful. Had a great conversation with him. He is a really great staff person. You got some talent on your staff. Just wanted to
thank you.
Again, one of the things
he's a good young man.
He really is.
He cares about Baltimore.
He really does. He really does. He's actually invested. And so one of the things that we're really big on here is that we shout out people who are doing good work. And I would be remiss if I didn't let you know you had good people on your squad.
Amen. Yeah.
So what you're talking about sounds like a progressive wish list. Like, for as a person who has suffered from mental health challenges and trauma and anxiety, depression, and those things, I love everything you're talking about. But as a business owner, as a citizen, as a pragmatist, what you're talking about sounds a little bit like a Christmas list, like that when I was little, not the ones I have now that I have to pay for. I'm talking about the ones I had before. It's like, I want a teacher in every classroom. I want da-da-da-da. Like, these are great things, but how are we going to get it? How are you going to make this happen? Because I know some of the colleagues that you'll be working with, And some of them aren't really prone on this idea. You mentioned next year may be one of the most Republican in Maryland history. Well, stereotypes being what they are, this is not one of those items that the Republicans will go along with. And let's be honest, some of your Democratic colleagues aren't with it either. So what is going to be different about your plan as opposed to this is just something that's going to sound good? How is it going to happen?
Well, the difference between my plan and everyone I'm running against's plan is that I've actually experience of getting things done. I mean, I actually have experience working the levers of government, and I'm running against. I mean, more than half the people I'm running against, a lot of them are from New York. I mean, they don't have the Maryland roots, but more importantly, they don't have the experience. They never run for dog catcher, and experience matters in the sense of getting things done. Getting things done, like putting mental health officers in schools, getting things done, like mental health officers working with first responders who certainly need that opportunity, and mental health in our prisons, and helping people as they're about to re-enter, become returning citizens. How are they affected? What's in their mindset? So I think, and having the ability to do that. I mean, we're talking about being president of the National Association of Attorneys General. I mean, I ran the mortgage foreclosure crisis settlement. We had almost $2 billion coming to Maryland to keep people in their homes and fight the big banks. You just got to have the courage to do it, but an understanding how to make it work. Now, how do you get the money? We're going to legalize cannabis. We're going to reform the procurement system. We're going to make a much more progressive tax structure without raising taxes, but make sure that the right people are being taxed, including corporations that are both national and international that are that are in our state. So there's a lot that we can do. Plus, by the way, we have some money right now from the Build Back Better and the infrastructure. We have $2.5 billion we can use, and I just think people's mental health, particularly right now in COVID, as that's to extend it, matters.
So to your point.
Hi, my name is William Honolulu Jr., and I'm the host of the BlackUSA.news morning show and the president of the Grinding Gang Incorporated. The Grinding Gang is an organization that helps small business owners in the nonprofit and for-profit communities figure out how to make sense of all the noise. There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. We help you develop business plans. We help you figure out what to do with a lot of the information you receive, and we also help you figure out how to become more profitable. We also host a variety of workshops. You can check out our next workshop on grant writing right here.
That matters.
So to your point about the mental health when it comes to COVID, guess what? There are all of the structures before about what mental health was. All of them are going to have to be changed now because our baseline as a population worldwide has changed. Never before in our lifetimes have there's ever been a crisis where nobody knew what was going on and it just kept getting worse. I remember before the pandemic, we used to say, "Oh, I'm avoiding that like the plague." Can't say that anymore because apparently we're going to go to bars if there's a plague outside because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So a few of my family members have died of COVID, so it hits me a little bit differently.
Yes.
But to your point about mental health, these are wonderful ideas, but some of your colleagues are not going to be with it. As governor, especially with the budgetary levers that the governor has, you will have a lot of power as governor. But you remember how Mike Miller used to run it. At a certain, Ferguson isn't Mike Miller, but he is also no joke, and they all have their ideas about how things should be. So again.
Yeah, and you talked about getting elected president of NAG of all the AGs. I mean, I work. I play sports. I've been playing team sports my whole life. I'm a team player, and I work with folks, Democrat and Republican, by the way, alike, to get things done. And I've got a history of that. Whether you pick the area, whether it's the environment, whether it's public health, whether it's crime, and sitting down and listening to people, hearing what they want, how they want to do it, to me makes an enormous amount of sense. I think the mental health is not something that is sort of buried. I think people recognize we need help with our mental health system, and so I'm looking forward to working with President Ferguson, Speaker Jones, Treasurer Davis now, and we've got some great sort of diversity in there now as well, and making sure we have the money to pay for those kind of programs. And mental health, I think, is now, as I said earlier, from speaking to groups is really on the top of people's minds in a lot of different spaces. And COVID, not the least of which, is one of them. And hopefully we'll be done. I mean, I'd like to, as we sort of approach the new year, I would love not to hear about COVID and Donald Trump. And I'd like to have people be happy again, talk about mental health, things that like joyous things. And not those two things were just.
In talking about mental health, one of the things that we were talking about yesterday about mental health was the fact that there are things that impact your mental health that have nothing to do with you. Donald Trump and COVID are some of them. And one of the things that, to your point about mental health, it is actually acknowledging the issues that people are having. Right now, we have so much stigma around mental health.
Yes.
Some of your colleagues that I know, some of the issue is that they have stigma in their own lives around mental health. People who have depression and anxiety are perceived as having a character flaw. Same thing that we do with poverty. And so I appreciate the fact, if nothing else, again, because your plan is incredibly progressive and aggressive, but I appreciate the fact that it is forcing the conversation.
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So
and that's part of it, by the way. I mean, it's just mental health. The issue of mental health has just not been in the dialogue of in sort of political campaigns or government for so long. We used to have reform schools. Remember that back in the day?
Yeah.
And we don't have that stuff anymore because people are, to your point, people in their family themselves, people in their family, their neighbors, their friends, people have different levels of mental health issues, and we need to address that as a society, and we can and should do so.
Oh, so yeah, we just got this comment on the screen from Rondi. We're going to get ready to jump into that when we talk about economic development, cannabis licensing.
Well, cannabis is an issue. You're talking about where you're getting some money. Legalizing cannabis. I represent some minority-owned cannabis companies, and the way this administration, I'm not here to dog Hogan. He's done a good job on some things, but the way they do their procurement and the way they do their licensing, as we saw in the medical cannabis, where they excluded, African American or minority-owned businesses, is just nuts. I mean, because and it was based on sort of a lack of historical precedent in the field. Well, nobody had historical precedent in medical cannabis. It's not something that existed before. So and so you have to lift up and provide capital. We focus so much as Democrats on jobs, and jobs is important, but we need to focus on who owns the businesses that provide those jobs, and it's got to be minority businesses. And as Democrats, we're very, very laser focused on labor and unions, which are obviously very important to help promote the concerns of working families. But we need to promote our minority businesses, and even one step further, wealth, true wealth, and not just in the subs, but in the primes. And we need to make sure that we have, as we legalize recreational cannabis, we need to make sure that minority businesses are not only at the table, but getting fed.
Absolutely. To your point about minority businesses and really their engagement, especially in this cannabis space, one of the things that you said was that it was ridiculous that minority businesses were not included in the cannabis because they were talking about the lack of historical precedent. That's actually not true, though. We may not have done medical cannabis before, but this is not the first time that an opportunity has come from government and government has screwed out the Black community. Let's not pretend that is not a thing that our government. I mean, we invented redlining as Marylanders. We did that. Like, this is part of our heritage and our history. And again, if we're going to try to shy away from it, then we're no better than these people who are just making crap up about critical race theory. I mean, this is
totally right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the historical legacy of excluding Black-owned businesses in our state cannot be overstated. There's no question about that. What I was saying is that, look, so when I was head of the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee, one of my big things was lack of diversity on the bench. Montgomery County, despite what people say, is the biggest majority minority district in the country, and certainly in the state. And we have a lot of issues here, and we had no people of color on the bench. And so what they would say with one person, Lawrence Beard, who I actually have taught with for decades, and we just didn't have it. And they would say, well, that's because there's no qualified applicants. I'm like, what? And so of course when I became state's attorney, we exponentially hired people of color. Now fortunately we see them now on the bench. But the same thing is like, well, there's no experience and that. Well, you can't, it's a cart before the horse thing, and you got to give people an opportunity. There's a lot of talent, a lot of talent and drive in the African American community. We just have to give them the opportunity. This again is a little bit like we were talking earlier. We're not trying to fix anything. We're just trying to give people access to the opportunity to thrive and make money, make wealth, and then bring everybody into the deal, and tap into the talent of every Marylander.
Absolutely. And so to that point, I appreciate the things that you've been talking about and the work that you've done, to be honest, with helping African Americans, especially in this space with cannabis, working with the minority contractors, and honestly understanding kind of the root cause of some of these issues in business. Everybody talks about capital access, but one of the problems with capital access for minority communities is capitalism.
Yes.
Capitalism, the driver is profit. And one of the ways you achieve profit is by mitigating risk. Well, to work with a disinvested community requires a greater investment because you haven't been investing before. And it means that they are greater risks. So the need of capitalism is antithetical of the needs of the Black community. And that's why the arguments from people who have capital, and not just talking about financial capital, but like you were just talking, political capital. That is one of the reasons that Blacks are excluded for a lot of these positions, because the idea of the qualification itself is problematic. And
even just a fundamental understanding that there's bias and prejudice and racism out there to say, that people, well, why don't they just go get money? No, because the people who are giving money out don't look like them, and therefore they're going to go to the people. It's like when you sit at the lunch table when you're in 6th grade, you sit with people that look like you, and that we're trying to get away from that. Now, thankfully, generations to come, younger folks don't do that. They just sit with everybody. And so eventually, over time, things will get better, but we got to accelerate that in a big way.
Absolutely. And understand the socialization that happens for people in those situations. We start, the tabula rasa as children. Aside from genetic memory, we start as a blank slate. We learn all of these things by the environment around us. Now, sometimes we take things that people told us and process them in our head and come up with some wild stuff. But by and large, it comes from places externally, this socialization, this opportunity to teach people. And I think especially in what you identify with helping to expand opportunities for African Americans on the bench in Montgomery County, it goes very deeply into this idea of recognizing that it is systemic, and that somebody in the system has to take responsibility to change it.
Yes. I mean, look, it's not what we came on to talk about, but judges as a whole, judges matter, as we know, in the Supreme Court.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait. Judges, because watch this. A lot of the Black Wall Streets over time that have been built, they weren't necessarily destroyed by violence. They were destroyed by eminent domain. Yes. They were destroyed by lawsuits. They were destroyed by malicious intent and legal shenaniganizing. So, yes, judges are incredibly important to economic and education as well.
And one of the things I want to do as governor is to get rid of judicial elections. So, because what we've had in Maryland is, in the history of our state, no contested race for judge anywhere in Western Maryland, anywhere in Southern Maryland, anywhere in the Eastern Shore, where there's a person of color running against a white person, has the person of color ever won. In fact, they've lost every time.
Every time.
And so to have an understanding that it's the one time. Interestingly, where somebody, I don't plan to put my opponent's pictures on my literature, but when the white guy's running for judge, all of a sudden the Black guy's picture shows up
really big and a little darker sometimes, a little
exactly. Play that angle too. We did. When I was Attorney General, we did some voter regularity task force to try and make sure people had access to voting. And some of the stuff you saw that people were doing and putting out there, robocalls, don't forget to come vote on Wednesday. It's like, what?
Yes. Yes.
So there's
yes.
there's a lot of issues out there. And I'll tell you, sort of getting back to where we started, I mean, to me, it's important that we have a Democrat that can actually get elected. As we saw from this Gansler poll last month, where they said in Maryland, a progressive Republican, a moderate Republican. There's no such thing as progressive Republican. A moderate Republican.
I wanted you to tell me who that was real quick.
Exactly.
I want to have them on the show.
Republican against a progressive Democrat next year in Maryland wins by almost 20%. And so, interestingly, as progressive as I've been in terms of the things I've done, for whatever reason, people look at me and think of being moderate, maybe because I was a prosecutor for so long. But it's we need to actually win to get any of these ideas, because you're going to have people that speak a lot better than me and have raised a lot more money because they're sort of fundraisers by trade and all that. But we got to get a Democrat that can actually win the general election. We've lost 3 of the last 5, and we lost the last 2 in very Democratic years. Now we're looking at a Republican year. We need to actually win to get any of this accomplished, or we're going to be in worse shape.
Absolutely. So, you asked why people think you're a progressive. Dude, you have all of the character. I mean, not a progressive, a conservative or moderate Democrat, because everything about you screams moderate Democrat. Like you real talk, you look like the standard issue white guy politician. You from Montgomery County. Okay.
I'm glad you're saying all this, not me, but yes.
Yeah. You were a prosecutor at the feds and the state. And you were you stand. Everything about your resume sounds like you should not even. Mental health should be something that you do as criminal diversion, as opposed to actually care about people's mental health.
Well, and you take that one step further, and the prosecutor side, seeing what we did in terms of diversity and social inclusion, in terms of getting the first domestic violence dockets and the first drug courts to keep people out of jail, in terms of having a family justice center, which we're going to put around the state, which helps as a wraparound service for families, and we have in Rockville. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic because, yes, I to your point, and we unfortunately do stereotype, and I could be stereotyped easily as sort of the moderate, which is just fine. I mean, the last election, after Hogan won, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you lost, but it was great for me." I said, "Why is that?" This is like a few weeks after the election. He said, "We polled a week before the primary. We had you beating us by 22 points and us beating Anthony Brown by 3. I mean, so you look at on the cover, judging this book by its cover, you're going to say moderate. If you go one step below, you're going to see I ran Barack Obama's campaign with Elijah Cummings when nobody was on that camp. Everyone was with Hillary Clinton. And, this is sort of who I am and where I come from. And so I can, it's an interesting dynamic,
Let's see. Oh, talking about gentrification and empowering poor communities. So, and again, this has a very significant impact in Baltimore. This isn't just a Baltimore-centric issue. This is an issue for most Black communities, because what ends up happening, the disinvestment happens, the quality of life goes down, over policing, property values go down, assessments go up, people die, opportunities leave, blah, blah, blah. And then the saviors come in with a whole bunch of political capital, a whole bunch of financial capital, and they take these communities and they displace the residents. They send them to Harford County or someplace else that is not familiar to them. And then they pat themselves on the back and raise prices so that they can't come back in. That's an economic development issue having to do with judges, education, and mental health. So, I mean, it's complicated, but do you have an opinion or a plan for trying to either gentrify in place or stop the gentrification at all?
Yeah, and affordable housing is part of that equation as well, because once you start gentrifying, you need people to be able to live. In fact, grandma who's lived there for 60 years, you don't want to be sweeping her out of the neighborhood. You want to keep intergenerational units together. And Baltimore is a little different in this case as well from the rest of the state, in the sense of all the vacant houses. Depending on what day it is when you talk to, there's 10,000 to 30,000 vacant homes. You don't see that in other cities, by the way. It's just like, that's a Baltimore problem right now, and which actually I would say gives you an opportunity, because it gives you an opportunity to convert those to more community centers, to apartment buildings where you have a real and enforced affordable housing component to it, so that you're sort of grandfathering people in so they can stay there as you're beautifying the neighborhoods. And so it's a great question. It's one of the things we when I did the national mortgage foreclosure settlement, when we were keeping people in their homes away from being evicted, we had to make sure that that this wasn't a short-term solution, that they could stay. But it's a great question, and to your point, it's extremely complicated. One of the other pieces, the overlays of that also is public safety. I mean, right now, people don't feel safe, and it's like there's a lot of talk about police reform, and I'm all about that. I've been involved in that for 25 years, but we also have to recognize that crime disproportionately affects communities of color and underserved communities, and we need to make sure that we have police officers that have 2 years of experience before they get a badge and a gun.
I saw your Sunlight Pro. Yeah,
it's crazy. You're an 18-year-old here. You just graduated high school. Here's a gun, the badge. Have at it. That ain't gonna work too well, and it doesn't.
And I appreciate my interest of full disclosure, because we're about to talk about education a little bit. I have a lot of degrees and stuff, but I have also recognized that for a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, a lot of the people that I work with who do really great work, they don't have degrees. And so that as a prerequisite for some of these positions are problematic. Again, really happy that this is a move in the right direction, requiring the community college. But like and I would be hypocritical if I didn't also say that for police, there should be also another level of qualification, not necessarily just the grandfather and you have experience, but I did other things. I was in the military and those kind of things. But I do appreciate the qualification to ensure that there is a level of training, because I tried to be a police officer back in the day when I graduated college. And for me, it was, they were surprised by my test scores because of, I'm brilliant, and it was higher than they had normally experienced. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you saying? Like, is this? Yeah. And then I read the one defense was like, I can't remember. It's a defense about the police officer. They weren't smart enough to do something. And so I hate quoting stuff when I don't remember all the issues, but yeah.
No, it's a great issue. And the other thing, and it's from the sort of who you're attracting, and also what you're training. Cultural training, diversity training. That's one of the great things about community prosecution is you have prosecutors actually working with the police to teach them and to train them to make sure they understand what the laws are and what they are not. And you also are able to review warrants, no-knock warrants, search warrants, whatever, in advance, and don't just sort of lay it on them. But one of the things I call for is an independent assessment of all police departments. I wrote an op-ed months and months ago in the Baltimore Sun about this, which was to don't have police departments assess themselves. It's like asking the elephant to pass the peanuts. Have actually an independent group come in and say, what are you doing to promote diversity, not only amongst the rank and file, but in leadership? Because yes, I'm a Democrat, and that's my diversity has been my thing. But you actually are more effective and a better police department by having people who look like the people they serve. You're better at what you do. And so there's a lot we can do from that thing. And I'm talking, this all goes back to the gentrification issue, which is people aren't moving in no matter how expensive or cheap the housing is if they're not safe and they don't have good schools to send their kids to, and they don't have access to transportation to get to their job. And so
that's not actually true, dude. That's not true, because what ends up happening is that in those communities that are not safe, it's not true that people don't move in. Homeowners do not move in.
Yes.
Investors and developers, they move in, and then because they believe that, this is one of those communities anyway, these people don't vote, they don't have a lot of money, so we don't have to do the upkeep. Like, that is Baltimore, and again, I know we're trying not to be Baltimore specific.
Yeah.
But a lot of these problems are magnified in Baltimore. Again, they do exist in the Eastern Shore, but because of some of the racistness that is embedded in the laws and the operations of Baltimore City, and not just racism directly, but also a caste system. If you have a bunch of money in Baltimore, or you come from an old family or old money, you don't have problems in Baltimore. That's just the reality.
You don't see as many problems up in Guilford and
no. Oh, absolutely. Roland Park, Hamden, especially places like Roland Park.
Yeah.
And to see the gentrification effort, all you have to do is look down at Harbor East, look down at Canton. Those places get so much investment, but the only time anybody's talking about Park Heights is when you're talking about Pimlico when Preakness is involved. And that is one of the other challenges that we have as a state. And I want to say thank you to you, because a lot of what everybody else is talking about revolves around the money part. And again, you're a standard issue politician, looking white guy, who I'm assuming that your first thing, you're not talking all about the money parts. Money is important, but again, recognizing that the people are the most important reason to do any of this.
So much. And again, we're having this problem, but particularly in Baltimore, I mean, there are people that are mad and they care and they just want to have an opportunity. They're not asking just give me money. Just
absolutely not.
An opportunity to help lift up the city, whether in all these different areas, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's schools, whether it's jobs, housing, or public health. And so that's what a governor is supposed to do. A governor is supposed to, work with local stakeholders and address these issues. The minority business issue in Prince George's is a different minority business issue than in Baltimore.
Yes.
Than it is on the shore, than it is in Hagerstown. And you have to recognize that. And having actually been in office in Maryland, been a statewide office in Maryland, working on these different issues for decades in Maryland matters. And being able to get elected even matters more, because otherwise you're not even having the conversation.
All right, so you've mentioned electability a couple of times. Save this to the near the end of the show, because you want to make sure everybody is here and listening to make sure they hear this. Dude, there are 8 people have announced running for governor on the Democratic side already. And there's going to be a January pop-in. Somebody's going to make a misstep and somebody's going to feel energized by the session and think that they can do it. So there's going to at least be 1 or 2 more. And then the kind of neighborhood candidates. 6 of those people, the way it looks to me, 6 of them are running out of Montgomery County, including you. So that's a crowded field in your home turf. And so you may be right about the electability in the general. So tell me what because in Maryland, let's be honest, if this race for you, if the primary doesn't happen, none of the rest of it matters. The general isn't really a big deal. So why you in the primary and not the other 7?
Well, I mean, I think electability in the general matters for the primary. It did on the national level. A lot of people like Pete Buttigieg, a lot of people like Elizabeth Warren, a lot of people like Bernie Sanders. But at the end of the day, it's like, who can win? And so they went with Biden. And I think if you look at this, I think that may or may not matter. There's always this sort of shiny person, shiny penny over here, this shiny penny over there, and there's different people. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm hearing is people want someone with experience that knows how to make the levers of government work and can win. And in terms of the Montgomery County piece, Montgomery County matters significantly in this race, because approximately 23% of the voters in the primary are going to be from Montgomery County. It's where there's a $12 to $14 million county executive race that's going to be going on. There's nothing going on elsewhere in the state other than Frederick. There's a county executive race there, but not in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's, what have you. And so that matters. Now, I have about 70% name recognition among Democratic primary voters in Montgomery County with a 9% negative. So I think I'm at a big advantage to your question about these people live in Montgomery County. I mean, many of them have never run for office and never done anything in Montgomery County. So people don't even know they're from Montgomery County. They do know that the tax collector is from Montgomery County. He's not particularly
okay.
popular.
I'm sorry. But we do real things here. And I got to be honest, I love the fact that you keep calling him the tax collector.
Well,
I love that. But as a candidate, I love the fact that you have adopted that. That's actually pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, he's talking about judges. He's past the mandatory retirement age, and he's doing his thing. So, but he's out there, and he's qualified. He's been in office 36 years. Rashawn Baker from Prince George's County, he's qualified. He was the county executive and was the state senator. I mean, he's a wonderful, decent, great human being who's done a lot of good stuff in Prince George's County. Not everyone agrees with this or that, but he certainly is that. And then there's these other people. So whether they're from Montgomery County or not, what they've done, I mean, I don't think people sort of look at it that way.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Oh, We talked about the crowded field. Before we get ready to head out, because I know we still have about 10 minutes. One of the things that I wanted to know is often a lot of times we talk to politicians about what are you going to do for us? Like, you have an agenda, so what are you going to do? But I wanted to look at it a little bit differently. What do you need us to do? So let's say you get elected and everybody wants to know what you're going to do in your first 100 days. But as the Black community of Maryland, what do we need to do in the first 100 days? Because if we vote for you, we want your agenda to move. Same way with Biden. We voted for Biden. Some of us voted for Biden, and we were expecting his agenda to move. But here's the thing. At this point, it looks like a lot of it is stalled and is taking more work. So if Marylanders come together, and I'm talking specifically about Black Marylanders now, and even the ones that don't vote for you say, okay, now you're governor, what should we be doing in your first 100 days so that we can make this agenda happen?
Yeah, so I had a Black empowerment business group that I put together years ago, and sort of talked about this very issue. What are we going to do right when we get there? And part of it is showing up and making sure that when I'm there, because of my people, there's a lot of people saying a lot of different things in this election, but none of it matters if you never walk the walk. And so I think having people show up, having Black business owners, small business, and frankly, entrepreneurs and wealth managers and that kind of thing, showing up at the table and say, this is what we could do. Don't give us anything, but just give us that opportunity. Tell us, and I'm a listener, so I want to hear what we need to do and to help the community. Now, I've been hearing that everywhere on shows like this, on Donnie Glover and others, hearing what needs to be done, but we got to implement it. And so it starts with A, getting the Democrat elected, and B, caring and having it be the issue that matters to you. So to me, my history of starting the first civil rights department, working on issues that matter to Black Marylanders, I think is something that's going to be incredibly important to have somebody that comes into office with that mindset. And frankly, working with other Black Marylanders and political people. I mean, the Black Caucus is as big as it's ever been in Maryland, working with the legislative side on their issues. We now have an African-American treasurer, Derek Davis, who's sitting on the Board of Public Works. That matters. That's one of the three people that controls the money. Yes. So he's going to be a great asset there. One of the leading candidates for Attorney General is African-American, as is one of the two leading candidates for Comptroller is African-American. So, and then there are potentially African-American lieutenant governors out there. So there's going to be a lot of people at the table, and realizing as governor, yes, the buck stops with you, literally and figuratively, but this is a team effort and a Democratic team effort around the state, and then working with the mayors and local municipal governments as well. So
while I agree it is a team effort, I'm trying to find out what you want our part of the team to do. And showing up is a really great thing. But then let me, on behalf of some of the business owners and some of the members of the Black community that I work with, let me make this request. If you want us to show up and talk about what's going on, let's do it at a convenient time. Because we work 9 to right now. If you had a meeting for business owners, I can't go because I'm sitting here talking to you on the show.
Well, it's great, and the issue like around voting, for example, people can't vote sometimes on Tuesday for that very reason. You're working, and you're not supposed to be held against you, but everyone thinks it is. So, and sometimes it really is.
Let's not get it twisted. Sometimes it actually is.
Yes, it is, and so I want to have elections on Saturday. So the election's on Tuesday. But on that Saturday, 2 days before or 3 days before, every polling booth open. The school's not in, so you can use the schools, and that way people can actually vote and make a difference there as well. That's a small thing to some people, it's a big thing to others.
Oh, absolutely!
And now you're providing
It'll be a game changer.
Yeah, I agree.
But here's the thing. There are the people who your policies impact. So let's talk about entrepreneurs. There are several programs, and a lot of the elected officials and appointed officials, they highlight themselves. They talk about how great they are because they have signed off on these policies. They have put these things into place. But people who are trying to access those policies, they don't honestly have a mechanism to come and talk to you. They don't know how, because one, you'll be governor. You can't just talk to the governor. People don't know that. The other part is all your meetings are during the day. all the, there are people that are going to talk to you because they understand the process. But with what we have done to undermine civics education and all of that in our public schools, a lot of people don't even understand what your role is. You're supposed to be you're Santa Claus. Governors and executives are like political Santa Claus. Ho, ho, ho. If you elect me, all you have to do is vote. If you just vote for me, everything will work out. No, we, especially in Baltimore, democratically controlled for the entire time I've been here. And we are still talking about the same issues. So just being a Democrat and wanting to hear from me at this point, for me, I appreciate your resume, but I also want to know what we need to do, no matter who's elected, so that we can actually get some of these things we like, some of these progressive policies done, as opposed to just, well, we voted for Doug and like it's been like 100 days and we haven't gotten relief.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, particularly for those who don't have a history of being in office, because you don't know if they're going to show up or not. I mean, I'm out every night. I'm talking to community groups and want to hear from people.
I know, yeah.
That's where you learn. I don't have the answers, and I want to hear from other people who do. So as governor, you can either hide in the house or you could be out and about. And my history is out and about and talking to people. I mean, I smile when you say, well, you're a governor, you can't just see the governor. Well, you kind of can.
You can. But people don't know that. They have been socialized because of this power dynamic. That one of the stories I tell all the time about Donnie Glover, I think it was during Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. He rolled up to her with his cell phone, like, what have you done for Black people? What have you done for Black people? And it was like, do we talk to people like that? But guess what? By the fourth time in those community events that we went to, and he kept asking that question, by the fourth time, somebody had an answer.
Yeah.
And so, again, I really do appreciate what you've done. And I'm hoping that you'll be willing to come back next time. And next time, I will hope you are able to give us an answer. What do you want us to do? Because we're not just trying to put this on whoever gets elected, because that's part of the calculus of whether you get my vote or not. If I, for some people, I've seen politicians, my personal opinion, who just make promises that sound Christmas list like.
Yes.
And when I realize, and when talking to them and they say things like, well, you're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do higher taxes, we're going to have to, whoa, that's not what I was thinking. But at the same time, if there are some of these policies that actually require work for me, and I know what kind of work it is, not only am I going to be supportive of that candidate with my vote, I'm going to be supportive of that candidate with my time, my effort, and because I understand what I'm supposed to be doing before this ever pops off.
Yeah. No, I don't understand people who run for office and promise things and don't follow through with them. It just makes no sense, but apparently that happens all the time.
Oh, because it works, because people fear change. If you can get, I mean, look at you waited till, y'all guests do this all the time. Y'all wait till like it's almost time for the show and then get on a big issue about voter apathy and incumbent advantage and stuff. But see, you're not slick. You're not slick.
Well, it's all about empowerment. And I think to your point, how are you going to work with empowered folks that can empower themselves and have the governor help them empower themselves, so you're all in the same room and having the same conversation and not talking past each other? Because the people that are trying to open the businesses, they're trying to get a job, trying to get their kids to good school and all that, they know the answers a whole lot better than some governor does. And so you got to hear from them.
So can I at least, we only got a few seconds left. I got to wrap us up. But so can I get a commitment from you that if you become governor, there'll be a lot more meetings in the evenings and on weekends and
that's for sure. Okay. You got that commitment.
Now, okay. So be careful, because I take promises very seriously. It won't go well for you if you don't. I'm just letting you know.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you'll be right there. You'll be like Donnie with your thing.
I got a better camera, but yes, absolutely.
Where's my meeting? Yeah, where's my meeting happening? No, look, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, and I look forward to doing it down the road as well.
All right, sir. You have a great one, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Doug Gansler, a candidate for governor of Maryland and former attorney general of the state of Maryland and former state's attorney of Montgomery County. Thank you very much, sir, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. You take care.
Have a great one.
Have a blessed holiday.
You too. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all my people in internet land, we had a great show. It is time for us to wrap up. Please don't forget to hit up tonight. I think it's Sister Biz is tonight. Make sure you log on at 7 p.m. They have a great show, and they talk about some really dope stuff, looking at dope Black women and how they make things happen. Tomorrow, please make sure you join us. We're going to talk about athlete health. We're going to talk about prevention, and we're going to talk about what you can do to make sure that your student athletes and your loved ones are safe. All right, it's been wonderful, party people. I love you guys. Want to say a big shout out to the super producer, Crazy Horse Morgan. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day. I will talk to you